Hi, this is Cindy Pope. I'm here at the Cool Tools studio to show you how to do a fold-over earring project using my new templates. This is the organic tear template. This is the project video for the fold-over earrings, which we're making with the template C of the new template series I'm putting together. So I want to first talk to you about the tools I'm using in this project video. There's certain tools that I feel I need to have for almost any metal clay project. If you're using a texture, it's nice to have a toothbrush or some kind of brush to brush oil into the texture. For this one, I'm going to need a pencil. I love a basic clay shaper. They're used all the time. I like to brush my textures out if I've been sanding. You don't want to leave that dust in the texture. I love these little precision punches. We're going to be using a 2.5. You can get them individually or in a set. The tiny Princeton brush is perfect for any kind of little details, and I do a lot of detail finishing. I always use a scalpel. These tweezers, I have 2 pairs. I think I need more. And then I'm using the pink Tropical Shine. You need a sanding stick. And then I always use olive oil only. That's the only lubricant I use, and distilled water. For drilling the holes in my earrings, and for actually sometimes you can use texture to make patterns with these. I love this ball burr set. It's a fabulous set, and I finish all my earring holes using a 6mm stone setting burr. And if you want a stone, I'll be using a 3mm faceted cabochon. They come in lots of different colors, and they really add something to the earring. I start a lot of my rolling on a silicone mat, and I'm going to use the rolling frames, sanding sponges, and Nouveau Fouquet is a lovely texture that I'm going to be using. I'm going to use the joist chens because I'm going to show you how to make this with dry clay or wet clay. When I do earrings, I really like to use the scale. 3.5 grams is about the heaviest I like to have my earrings, so sometimes I'll sand down the back. I also like the earrings to be the same weight. So we'll use the scale at the end to measure the weight of your earrings. I'm using Cyprus Copper Clay, and I've rolled out some FS999 sheet, which we'll be using for the dry part. I also have a heating surface, and I'm going to show you a little trick with a little glass bowl. You can also use a stainless bowl. And I'm going to show you how to create a little oven that's going to dry your piece faster. You got to babysit it and make sure it doesn't curl up too much, but it's a great way to speed up the drying process. And this Cyprus clay and FS999 both like to be heat dried. I think they're better clay when they heat dry. And so that's all our products, so let's get started on the project. Okay, so let's show you how to make a project, a fold-over earring project with my new template set. So we're using the C template, and the C templates of every set are fold-over earrings or fold-over pendants. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you 2 ways to do this. I'm going to show you how to do it wet and how to do it dry. I'm going to make the Cyprus copper earrings, and then I'm going to show you how to cut them and dry. The construction is exactly the same. But I do want to show you how to do it dry. And I'm going to make a completely silver earring with no texture. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to oil all the surfaces we need to oil, because you don't want to forget to oil because your clay will stick. And I like to use a silicone surface. Now I use oil very sparingly, so I don't like squirt it or smush it on here. I just kind of put it on and then rub it in. You don't want it to stick to the surface. Same thing on the texture. You just don't want any pooling. If you get any pooling, get yourself a paper towel and take it off, because you don't want all that oil in your clay. And then you also want to oil the template. I often forget to oil the template. Both sides. It is reversible, but sometimes I forget which side I oiled. Okay, now we're ready to roll, and I'm going to show you how I roll my textures. What I do is I roll plain sheet, and with this one I'm going to use 4, which is a nice start. And then I'm going to roll the texture down to 3. There's a lot of great texture rolling videos on the Cool Tools YouTube channel. You want to make sure if you see any little cracks, you want to be sure you compress. But a way to keep the clay compressed is start much higher than 4 cards. And as you press down with the roller, it's going to compress any kind of folds in it out. You want to roll both directions. I learned this from Lizelle. She said clay stretches 2 ways, so you want to roll 2 different directions. So once I get that done, I'm going to take the 3 card, and I like to put my texture down. And then these are really great because the 3 card fits right on top of it. Make sure if you need to trim off some clay to make it fit, that's easier. And then I start from the middle and I go both directions. So basically what I'm doing is I'm putting the texture is going to stand up, but the back layer is going to be 3. I then sometimes go through and push down. Occasionally when you roll a texture, it doesn't get everywhere, but you're not going to change the thickness if you just kind of futz with it. What I do at this point is I roll onto a texture tile, which I want to put a little oil on too. I don't like to cut on my silicone mat. It does heal a little bit, but I have cut through it a couple times. So we want to turn it on and look at that beautiful texture. So I'm just going to do one of the earrings. And I'm going to use the smallest one. And this clay is going to shrink 20%, so this is the size you get, which is a lovely size. And if you wanted to do a matching pendant, you could use the large size. So I put it on top and I take my scalpel. And you just run it with the pressure up to the edge. You don't have to use a lot of pressure. I prefer this to a pick tool because the pick tool works really good if your clay is thin, but if it's a little thicker and you've got textures, it kind of messes up the edge a little bit more. And I'll tell you, when you put it on the tile, it cuts nicer. That will remind you that you shouldn't be cutting on your silicone surface. And we're going to pull the clay up. And I'm not going to move this because I don't want to, this is going to fit together with the other side. So I'm going to put this right on the heating surface on the tile, and then you want to put the bowl over it, and you're going to keep an eye, and you'll get some condensation on top, and you'll flip it and push it down. And if I dome these earrings, I did dome these a little bit after firing. So we're going to go ahead and dry this, and you can see these are 2 different sides, so I'm going to do the other side real quick. And I'm just going to start with 3 cards. Really important to get your clay even. If you're not sure, you can always pick it up and take a look at all sides. So let's use this other tile, and then we'll cut the other halves of the earrings. You can also use a dehydrator. I often make several pairs of these at once, and a dehydrator is really, really helpful for that. So now I'm going to cut the other sides. And then we're going to put them in the drying surface. Then we're going to go on to the construction. I don't cut any of my holes until the very end. And I'm going to show you how to set a really pretty stone in these. But they look really nice without a stone too. And if your cutting isn't perfect, don't worry about it because we're going to sand them once they're dry. This clay is just amazing texture. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on the drying surface too. Again, using the bowl, and then we'll go ahead and join them. Okay, so let's remove our dried earring. I've got the 2 halves, and they're completely dry. You want to be 100% dry. You're going to have a better outcome. And these are fold over earrings. So you can see 1/2 folds over the other. And Cyprus, while it's very strong in the greenware phase, does have some flexibility. Some clays, if you did this, might crack. Also, Easy 960 and FS999 are both going to be fine for this design, but you want a clay that's not brittle. And this is certainly not a brittle clay. And what I do is I fold them over, and I got to get it close to my face so I can see. And then I draw a line, because joining this smooth part to a textured part, you're not going to get a good join unless you sand it down a tiny bit there. So I'm just going to make myself a pencil mark to help me join these two together. And I do clean up the edges. I've already done that. I've cleaned this up a little bit. When I join 2 pieces together, I always clean first and then I join, because it's hard to get in and sand this inside edge once you've joined it. So I'm also going to mark the back. So obviously I don't need to sand here because it's already smooth, but I do need to sand right there. All right, now that we've marked the 2 parts, I'm going to just make sure that I have smoothed off the textured part that is going to be added. The next thing I want to do is I want to prepare it for this little stone. And the way I do this, there's 2 ways to do this. You can use a ball burr and create a hole, or you can use the precision punches. This is a 2.5, so I have a 3mm stone. I'm going to create a 2.5mm hole, and then I'm going to take this stone setting burr and I'm going to just widen it up a little bit, and that's going to hold it in place. So let me show you how that works. You want to go slow with this, and I'm going to put my reading glasses on so I can get right down in the circle. You want to be, when you're using one of these, you want to be about 2mm from the edge, or you might get some cracking. So if you're thinking you're not going to be, you're too close to the edge, go ahead and use a ball burr. You can take the little bit of copper out with your tweezers. And you could use that again. I usually just reconstitute it. So what happens is I've got a 2.5mm hole that I want to set in here. I want the setting to be flat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and widen it just a little bit using the stone setting burr. Not too much. Now I have people who are big sanders, don't sand past 3mm because then your stone will not fit. So I want to make sure it's flush, and that's good. Easiest setting you're ever going to do. So we're going to join the top. I'm going to let it dry, and then we're going to put that stone in. You're bringing up, I'm just adding plain water, but I'm creating slip by moving it around. Always do that to both sides. You want a great join because you don't want your pieces coming apart in the kiln. Turn it over and make sure it's well aligned. And pressure is the way to make this join good too. The whole point is you want it to feel like one piece of clay. I will refine this little edge later. Okay, so now we're going to move it over to the heating surface. We're going to let it heat a little bit, and then we're going to add that stone. Okay, I've taken this off the heating surface. It's the most stiff for a little bit when it's hot, so let it cool down a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of the ball burrs, and this one is about 1 millimeter, and I'm going to create a little azure hole. Even though these are flat backed, I really like to see the light coming through. It also will tell you where to put the stone when you're getting ready to close up this back. And these ball burrs are just really so handy. It takes a little bit longer with Cyprus because it's a little stronger, I think, in the greenware stage than a lot of clays. Then I'm going to go over, and then just to make it look pretty, I just take this little stone setting burr and just kind of curve the hole a little bit. I'm getting a little dust, so I'm going to brush that off. Okay, so now I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to just take my tweezers and make sure the hole still looks good. And I'm going to take that stone, and we're going to trap it in there. First, I'm going to wet it on both sides. And remember, both these sides are flat, so they're going to join nicely together. This is why I need the tweezers. I could never do this with my hand. And when I'm doing it at home, I have my face right on top of it. So there you go. We've got it set. Again, you want to hold it for a little bit to make sure it's really joined nicely together. Then we're going to put it on the drying surface, and we are going to come back and reinforce and drill a hole. We're completely dried, and I do want you to, with the first joining, I want you to completely dry it. When you're reinforcing, if you're reinforcing several times, you can go back and forth and not have it, just give it a couple minutes. So what I'm going to do is every join needs to be reinforced. You don't want pieces coming apart. This one has 20%, this clay has 20% shrinkage, so you really want to be sure everything is really nicely joined, because firing stresses are going to kind of work against you. So what I'm going to do is I'm just taking this little slip from when I was creating the sanding, and I'm just making sure the edges are joined. And I'm going to do that on every side. And this is one reason I like the Princeton brush, because I don't want to get, a big brush. I just want to get back in that corner. And you can do this more. And if you feel like your clay isn't fitting nicely, you could actually create some slip and put it in there on the back. On the front, you don't want to put any slip in because it's going to look kind of messy. Now, when you get to the part with the texture, what you want is you want the brush to run along the top piece. You don't want the brush to be hitting the texture a lot, just at the very edge, because you don't want to mess up that beautiful texture. This is a really pretty texture on this. And if you get some water, you can always take a paper towel and take it off pretty quickly. The other thing you want to do is you want to make sure this outside edge is good. And with this one, I use the disposable applicator, because these are fabulous. There are some smaller ones too, but I kind of like this big one unless I'm doing tiny little detail work. And the point you want to get to is you want to get the two sides to look like one. So you'll reinforce and sand and reinforce until you don't see the line that joins them. If you have a line, you can always fill it with a little bit of clay. And in that case, the best tool to put a little clay in with is a clay shaper. Because whenever you're filling holes or filling cracks, you always want to make sure you're pushing down in there, and that clay shaper really does that. Okay, so once I've got that done, I'm going to dry it, I'm going to reinforce it again, and then we're going to drill the holes. Okay, so now we've reinforced a couple times. We want to make sure it looks really nice because we never go on to the next step until this one is good. So I'm going to make sure all the edges are nice and smooth. And I want to make sure that there is no line. And this is where you would sand them even, this last little bit. Okay, so now I want to drill a hole. I drill a hole using these two burrs again. This is the 6mm from the Cool Tools website, and this is from the set of ball burrs. And I drill a hole this is a very strong clay, so I think if you're like 2mm from the top, you're going to be good. But if you're concerned with other clays, if they're brittle clays, you can drill a little bit down and then sand to the hole. But this one, I'm really not concerned because I made 18 pairs of earrings and I didn't have any problems with it. So I start with this. Depending on how big you want your hole, this one is about probably 1.5 millimeters. It's a nice one to start with. And what you'll notice is this is pretty thick here where the hole went through. So I sometimes sand down just so the ear wire is going to not fit over two thicknesses of clay. So you can sand it down a little bit. I don't want you to thin up this edge. So just make sure you're only getting where the hole is on the very top. We just want that ear wire to fit in there really nicely. Once I've done that, I take and make them look really beautiful with this sanding burr. Which also, you know, curving these edges, it looks pretty, but it also helps the earring move in a nicer way. They swing on the ear wire a lot better. And this is where you want to actually use your brush to make sure you get any dust out of there. So now we're ready to fire. I've refined. You want to clean your stone and then fire according to the Cyprus instructions. I do want to show you, we have some new silver earrings with a copper ball. A lot of people prefer silver for their ear wires. So this is a nice option for your copper earrings. To kind of make sure you have silver for your clients and for yourself, but still tie together with the earring. And I really love the little copper ball. It's a new product at Cool Tools. So I'm going to show you really quickly how I do this on dry clay. We're not going to construct the whole thing, but I just want to show you, you can roll out sheet ahead of time and cut on dry clay. So you want to make sure you don't have any base metals around. And you just need a pencil and our template. And this is a large piece for a class I did. And this is FS999, which I love because it's really easy to work with dry, which is my favorite way to work. And it's really, really nice to fire. And it's flexible, of course, because I use it in the curio also. Okay, so you want to get these as close together. It reconstitutes beautifully as long as you only use a little bit of olive oil. And so what we're going to do with these is I'm going to cut it out with scissors. And I'm not going to cut it all the way out, but I want to show you these Joyce Chen scissors. You can cut flexible metal clays. You can cut the copper, and you can also cut FS999 and Easy 960 with the scissors. And I just cut right up to the edge. And one of the reasons I like to do this dry is there's no drying distortion. So it's a little bit easier to join the two pieces of clay because clay is always, you know, dry a little bit funky. Cyprus doesn't dry too badly. I don't think it distorts a lot when it dries. It might curve a little bit, but it doesn't really distort. But some of them will end up being wonky and wobbly, like different on one side than the other. So you can just cut it out dry. And it goes really quickly, so you could make a giant sheet of texture and then just cut a bunch of things out. And then with the leftover clay, I either reconstitute or I use paper punches and create paper punch earrings because I just love those. And we have a lot of different paper punches at Cool Tools that you can use to create really unique projects. So I am going to sand that up, but see, this is it's almost like paper. It's crazy how flexible it is. So you can cut really any shape. It doesn't have to be these earrings. It doesn't have to be this template. It can be any template we have in the line. So there you go. We just construct as usual. Here are our finished pieces using the organic teardrop fold over earring template. I hope you enjoy this new project using my new templates.
Visit our Learning Center at cooltools.us for more cool jewelry making videos. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and be sure to sign up for our email list to be the first to hear about new videos, new products, and other cool stuff from Cool Tools.